Remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. This is a really special episode about the Lexington Legends. Most of this episode was recorded before the Legends announced that they were going to rebrand as the Legends, reprising their nickname that they had had for 20 years before moving away from that nickname for the 2023 season and being the Lexington Counterclocks. I'll be speaking with designer Dan Simon, who created the new Lexington Legends brand. I'll be speaking with Brendan Kane, who is an educator in the state of Kentucky. And then Dan Simon will be back with one of his Studio Simon stumpers. Right now, I'm so pleased to welcome back to the podcast Alicia Amling of Temerity Baseball. Alicia is the director of Temerity Baseball, the new owner for, we can say it out loud now, the Lexington Legends. Alicia, how are you doing? Welcome back.
I am doing great, and thanks for having me. It's nice to have had a very brief relationship with the name Lexington Professional Baseball because it doesn't really roll off your tongue so well. So we're happy to be the Legends officially. It was the worst kept secret in that little part of Kentucky.
The advertising that you had out there saying that the new name was going to be legendary, I think may have been a little bit of a giveaway. But it's not just that you are reprising the old name. There is now a new brand to go with it that was created by Dan Simon, and I'll talk to Dan later on in this episode. This brand is a lot of fun. It certainly evokes the old, the color scheme and some elements of the old brand, especially the mustache. The mustache is still there, but it has the centerpiece of this new brand is this character, Mighty Lex, who is a lot of fun. He's basically a baseball in an old-timey baseball uniform. Before we get into Mighty Lex, what was the thinking for you all at Temerity Baseball in terms of bringing back this Legends name that had been around for more than 2 decades, replacing Counterclocks, which only lasted 1 season? What was the thinking in bringing back the Legends?
So the Legends, they're legendary. They were a beloved brand in minor league baseball. When we first kind of started dabbling in minor league baseball, the Legends are one of those teams you heard about because they were loved by fans. They had a nice stadium and a great town for baseball, and they just had a great baseball moniker. It's nothing crazy, we're certainly not the Trash Pandas, and it's not that innovative. It's just a really nice rolls off your tongue name. And we also love the idea, if you know our other 2 teams, we're kind of classic baseball guys, and we thought the Legends really fit in with that classic baseball vibe, while also it can kind of be a choose your own adventure. You can talk about baseball legends, you can talk about Kentucky legends, you can talk about sport legends writ large. When we think of the tagline "Be Legendary," that can mean a lot of things. So we really thought it lent itself to being legendary in baseball, but also really you can be legendary in your community and kind of cement our philosophy of baseball and baseball being a big part of a community. And total transparency, we also closed on the team in January, and you can't come up with a good new name and a brand in 3 months. So when we had this perfect gem of a name sitting there, it was a no-brainer to go back to something that more than 5,000 people wrote in to the local paper after the Counterclocks saying, "Bring back the Legends." So we knew there was some desire of the fan base to return. The return of the Legends was important.
Sometimes there's a rebrand that just doesn't quite catch on. I think that it's definitely the case that the Counterclocks were only around for a year, the 2023 season, and that rebrand just didn't really catch on. Like I said, the Legends were around for 2 decades, starting in 2001. And I think there was a real nostalgia for a team that had only been gone for 1 season at this point.
Right.
For you all as a new ownership group to come in and to sort of seize on that nostalgia, I think was a great opportunity for you. What was it, about that name that or this community that just said to you, okay, we got to get back to this Legends name?
Well, it the Legends, it does sort of fit in with Kentucky. People, you go to Kentucky and the horses, which the counterclocks relied a lot on the horse imagery. Horses are big and they're everywhere. You land at Cincinnati Airport, and the minute you cross the border, you're horse farm, horse farm. So you do have that kind of iconic, legendary feel of like, oh, this has been what it's been like for like 200 years. It's pretty legendary. And then uh, so you have the horses, you have the bourbon. Like there's just a lot of that feeling of warm old things when you're in Lexington, and legends just sort of make sense. And I personally actually like the imagery of the counterclocks. I think there's some cool. I make a point not to buy merchandise when I go to minor league ballparks, because I would just have way too many t-shirts and hats if I did it everywhere I went. And I bought a counterclock sweatshirt and I wear it almost every week. So I might be one of the few people who are wearing counterclock gear right now, but I actually did like the imagery. But knowing that there was such an ardent push in the community, we did do some very small, narrow focus groups with some season ticket holders, past and present, and it was just across the board a desire to go back to that Legends. And we the team lost its affiliation in 2020, so there's been a lot of changes over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think the desire to go back to that name not only speaks to the way people loved the name, they loved their experience at the Legends. They loved going to that packed opening night in 2001. They loved those first 10 years where there were five, it was just a great packed ballpark. And that's what they want to go back to, is that experience they had. So we're going to try to deliver that experience, and we can definitely deliver that name.
Well, at the time of this recording, and this is really fun for me, it's one of my favorite things about writing for sportslogos.net is that I sometimes teams will grant me access to the branding before it is actually unveiled so that I can write about it and have it ready to go when the team makes the announcement. So I appreciate that you all allowed me to have access.
We love that you love sports branding. So,
and it's fun for me. Like, I feel like such an insider now, like getting access to this and getting
right.
to talk about it. But as we're talking about it right now, we don't know what the reception is going to be, right?
Correct.
This has not been unveiled outside of, the interior work that you all have done. We don't know. I think it's pretty safe to bet that people are going to really enjoy that this brand that they liked is back, and that there are certain elements of it that are new, not the least of which is this Mighty
I hope
Lex
so.
character. Yes. Oh,
Right.
yeah, for certain. And, and I really enjoyed, like I said, I'll be talking to Dan about Dan Simon created this brand working with you all again for the third time. And, I think people will appreciate that this new character who is the centerpiece of this brand, Mighty Lex, like I said, an old-timey baseball guy whose body is a baseball. He's really fun. And so a lot of the elements are familiar, the color, the mustache, the LEX brand. So there are certain things that carried forward from the previous marks. But this new character, tell me about this new character. You called him your little guy before we started recording, which is the same language you used when we were talking about the Kannapolis Cannonballers and
Yes,
the baseball-headed human cannonballer. Your little guy, Mighty Lex. Tell me about Mighty Lex.
So we loved the identity. We loved kind of the swagger of the old identity, but we really wanted something a little more accessible, a little less masculine and gendered in this big Paul Bunyan way. And we wanted something that we thought a little kid would run up to, that I would put on my hat and be like, "Who is that cute little guy?" I'm careful to say I shouldn't say he's cute, because I think he with his wink and his mustache, I think he's just a debonair guy with swagger who might be packing a lip of chewing tobacco, or he might have bourbon in his water bottle. Because he certainly has he certainly has some swagger, I think, which I credit Dan, the fact that he can put character, if you can put debonairness and he can put swagger into a ball-headed figure, is pretty impressive. I think the old-timey uniform helps with that. We went back and forth a couple of iterations worrying, is he too much like Mr. Peanut? Is he too much like the Monopoly Man? There are a
Mm,
couple of, those really evocative fellas, for lack
yeah.
of a better term. He's just a fella, and that are iconic in brands. And when you look at some of the you're like, no, he's not like either of those people actually. But he evokes, at least for our team, he evokes that same feeling of, oh yeah, he's smooth, he's cool. And that's what we wanted to people to take away from this guy. We are calling him Mighty Lex because one of the legends of baseball, Mighty Casey, we thought that was just a really kind of good tie-in back to who are the legends. And Mighty Casey at bat. Well, we've got Mighty Lex. He is swinging for the rafters in his hometown, and he's doing it with style. So that's where he evolved from. There was much consternation over, is he too cute? Are his arms thick enough? Is he strong enough? So we didn't want to go totally away from that, just brawn and bravado of the
Yeah.
previous character, while also wanting someone you could, put your arms around, and felt a little fresh, a little more youthful. And I hope that people agree we landed there. In our focus groups when we shared this, some people joked that he was like the product of the original character and Pee-wee, which is the ball-headed mascot the team used to use. That there was like an amalgamation of those two characters, and he sort of is. So I was not our intention, but I kind of like that there is some genealogy there, and he'll be a heck of a lot harder for the mascot company to make than if we had just used the original guy. But
I would
but no
propose
one's gonna call him Paul Bunyan, so that's
that's
good too.
true. I would propose that he could be cute and have bourbon in his water bottle, especially in Kentucky.
Yes, especially in Kentucky. Yes, this is true.
Speaking of Kentucky, the state outline shows up in a couple of the marks. I'll talk to Dan about those, but it was obviously important to you in this new suite of logos to reinforce the Kentuckiness of the brand. Why was that important to you as part of this new suite of logos?
It's important to the fans. The L with the state is one of their number one selling hats, and it's sold not just at ball games, but that's the thing that people who maybe didn't go to a ball game still thought, huh, that's a really cool hat. I'm from Lexington, I want that.
Mm.
So that I think the L with the state of Kentucky, it says very clearly where you're from and what you're proud of. And we are just starting to get to know that and become a part of that community. So I won't, but we did hear that that's what people wanted and what they loved.
What goes into the decision, as a new ownership group for a team that is reprising a decades old name? What goes into the decision of how much to bring forward from the old marks and how much to bring in that is new? How much did you want to rely on the nostalgia for that old Legends brand, and how much did you want to make sure, like this Mighty Lex character, was brand new?
That's a great question, and I wish we had a formula for it.
I need a
I'd be
rubric.
so yeah. Get a rubric, and then maybe talk to the Diamond Baseball folks because they have to do this over and over and over again. Whereas we have only had the privilege of doing it now 3 times. And I would say we've done it differently each time. In Canopolis, there was some baggage that we needed to get away from, so it was very straightforward that nothing was really carrying over. In Greensboro, we we took the do no harm approach because Greensboro was a franchise with attendance was good, numbers were good, people loved the franchise, and we just didn't want to screw it up, while also recognizing that there was some need to bring it into this millennium. Or I know that's not fair. It
It's
was
fair.
done
That
in the
that mark needed to be
2000s, but
updated.
it did need to be updated though, and for the 20th anniversary season, we did update it while truly keeping it a refresh. Whereas I would say this Legends, we go beyond a refresh because we introduced the Mighty Lex character, but we were able to keep the color scheme. It's a natural fit. We did talk about, are these the right colors, and it seemed like a no-brainer question. We talked about it probably 2 or 3 group calls, and I was like, "What? Why are we forcing the issue? The answer is so clear that we all think green and blue is the right answer." So the color scheme was a no-brainer. That was an
Yeah.
obvious thing to bring over. The L state was another no-brainer just because we had heard for years about that logo that people really liked. And the mustache, well, you've seen our identities. We like a mustache. Never seen a mustache we didn't like. So so that was an obvious mark. And that the mustache by itself was I think I have to credit Brandios for the update they had done on the brand
Yeah.
in the late teens, and people loved that. It was beloved across minor league baseball. So there were just elements. You'll notice, I think, if you look closely at Mighty Lex's mustache, we did make some tweaks to the mustache, and then we made sure to tweak the mustache. Standalone is exactly the same mustache that's on Mighty Lex. That was a debate, and we made sure it matched. And I wish we had more time in the community. In Kannapolis, we had more than a year to learn folks and really dig in. And in Lexington, we didn't. We went to our first game in September, so we've kind of taken a crash course in getting to know the region and these folks, and so that made us more reluctant to give up things that they had liked. They at least said with their wallets that they liked them.
I have one last question for you, and then I'll let you get out of here. I have in my collection, I have at least 2 Lexington Legends ice cream helmets. Do we know which logo which logo is going on the ice cream helmets, and what color will the helmets be?
That is a great question, and we have officially hired our director of operations for the concessions team. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. The color of the helmet might be the stock green they already have in stock because it is February and
Love a
we
green
need to
helmet.
order
That's all
some
right.
ice cream hats. So I'm picturing we might have we also, the ballpark is, the gentleman we bought the team from did a wonderful job making some really beautiful updates to the ballpark, and embraced the navy that had already been at the ballpark, the navy and the hunter green classic ballpark colors. So while our identity is the true royal blue and true bright Kelly green, the ballpark itself has some of that navy blue and hunter green. So if there's don't be surprised if your ice cream helmet is navy blue with with a green LEX on it. So
we won't be checking the Pantone colors on it. So
I appreciate that, because we also have a couple of old Legends steel or cast iron support beams for our seats have the original Legends font on them, and we certainly aren't replacing those in the next 3 months.
I think that sounds kind of cool, actually. I like
yeah,
the
it's
throwback.
You kind of get to appreciate all the different iterations of the brand in the ballpark, and we agree. Part of being a legend is that you don't throw out the past.
There you go. Oh, perfect. What a quote.
There we are.
Alicia, thank you so much for making time to chat with me. At the time of this recording, we're just a couple days away from the unveiling, and so I know that you are very, very busy. I can't wait to see what the reaction is going to be. You're 2 for 2 with the Cannonballers and the Grasshoppers with really good, positive reactions to these brands, and I have no doubt that this Legends brand will be the same. I'm going to go talk to Dan now about the work that he did in putting together the logo. And thank you again, and look forward to talking to you the next time we've got a Temerity baseball team to talk about. In the meantime, where can people find the Legends online?
LexingtonLegends.com.
That's pretty easy.
We still have all of the domain names from the previous team have been transferred to us. So LexingtonLegends.com.
Fantastic. Alicia, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the time, Paul. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am always happy to be talking to my friend Dan Simon of Studio Simon in Louisville, Kentucky, just down the road from Lexington, kind of, I guess. Dan, good morning. How are you?
I am fantastic. You just said just down the road from Lexington. I guess it is just down the road, depending on what technically just down the road means. I consider it just down the road. It is slightly over an hour away, but I've made that trip numerous times. My son has played in that stadium on more than one occasion. So I've gone to Lexington for other reasons, but I've gone there for baseball a lot, and specifically to the ballpark in which the Lexington Legends will be sporting the new attire I've designed for them.
Let's talk about this revived Lexington Legends brand that you created. It went away for a year and then came back under the careful guidance of your hand with a new character, Mighty Lex. This is a first for Baseball by Design. You and I have done this a number of times where we have talked about a brand before it was unveiled. And so I always feel like I get access to top secret, fun minor league baseball world information when I get access to these brands before they go live so that I can write about them for sportslogos.net. I, of course, will be doing that for this brand as well. Listeners of this podcast may have seen the article that is not yet written because it will feature quotes from this interview. But at the time that you're listening to this, if you're listening to it the day it drops, that article went up 5 days ago. This brand's been around for 5 days. At the time of this conversation, the world has not yet seen Mighty Lex, the character that you came up with in this revised brand. So there's a lot of stuff in this brand that will be familiar to people who knew the Lexington Legends before they went away in favor of the counterclocks for a season. They're back now under new ownership. The green and the blue are certainly familiar. There are elements of the brand that are familiar, but this new character, Mighty Lex, is, I think, the centerpiece of this brand. Let's talk about Mighty Lex. What were you thinking when you came up with him?
This brand, as it previously existed, there were two previous incarnations of this brand. There was the original, and then there was Lexington Legends 2.0 that was developed by Brandiose. And in both of those iterations, there was a Mighty Casey-esque character. I don't know, I can't say because I was not involved in those identity development projects, but I can't say if it was specifically supposed to be either Mighty Casey or heavily inspired by him. But I do know that when Temerity Baseball, owned by Andy Sandler and his sons, they wanted to bring back, of course they had the opportunity to keep the Counterclocks name or completely rebrand, but they wanted to bring back the Lexington Legends. And I was happy that's what they decided to do, because kind of always liked that direction. And what I wanted to do with this was I wanted to lean heavily into Mighty Casey. And that's why we're going with the name Mighty Lex, because it's not coincidence. The difference here being the narrative is, for those of you who, I hope a lot of the listeners here know what happens at the end of Casey at the bat. Spoiler alert, he strikes out.
Dan, everyone who is listening right now listened to the episode that we did about the Mudville Nine, and they remember the dramatic reading of Casey at the bat performed by so many voices from this minor league baseball community. So if you're listening now, surely you listened to that Mudville 9 episode we did.
Okay, so I would imagine then I did not spoil it for anyone. If I did, shame on you for not listening to all of the Baseball by Design podcasts.
Go back and download the complete catalog.
But the narrative here is, this is Mighty Lex, and Mighty Lex did not strike out. Mighty Lex delivered, and the legend was born.
So I know that you have worked with Temerity Baseball before. Obviously, in the previous segment on this episode, I was speaking with Alicia from Temerity Baseball, and it's notable to me that one of the other teams you worked on with them was the Kannapolis Cannonballers, and that is a team that also features a character with a baseball head. And so this is a character. Mighty Lex has an entire, at least baseball torso and head. He's a baseball body with legs and arms. Is that something that just was pure happenstance, or did that come about because of some direction from them?
Oh, no, it wasn't direction from them. It was something that I proposed to them. You know, I've done so many characters, and you do run the risk of some visual redundancy. I wanted to somehow depict a baseball player, a person, in a different form than the normal body. And that was the impetus for using virtually the whole baseball as his body, as you described it. It's a baseball. It's from the, I guess, the crotch up is baseball. And then he's got legs beneath the baseball and arms out the sides. Just wanted to do something a little different than usual.
So this character, is of an era. It has a sort of a time association, an era association. He's got the pillbox cap with the letter L on it. He's got, these sort of button up. It looks like sort of half pants, half shirt with, like pants buttoning up to what ends in like a bow tie, I guess. Looks like an old-timey baseball player. He does, of course, have the mustache. When I was discussing my editorial calendar for sportslogos.net with Chris Creamer, and I told him that there was an article on this coming, his first question was, so no more mustache? And I said, nope, mustache is still there. And so that is obviously a centerpiece of this brand for a while that you carried over and incorporated into the new brand. Tell me about the importance of not just a mustache, but this very particular style of mustache for the Lexington Legends.
Well, it was important for two reasons. One was, you mentioned this is a kind of has a period look. You mentioned the pillbox hat. You mentioned his jersey, which, by the way, that's not a bow tie. That's supposed to look like a collar, like the old time jerseys that players from turn of the century and before.
I realized it as soon as I said it. Yes, it's obviously a shirt with a collar.
And of course, Mighty Casey himself, who is the inspiration from Mighty Lex, had a handlebar mustache. It's stereotypical of that era. Also, both iterations of the character from the previous identities had a handlebar mustache, and kudos to Brandiose, who leaned heavily into that mustache when they did Lexington Legends 2.0. They, not only did their character have that handlebar mustache, but they did a baseball cap with just a mustache on it that proved to be very popular. And of course, we're bringing that back. So it was both appropriate for the time period or stereotypical of the time period, and it was a big part of the brand previously, and so had to have that.
For sure. And it's featured in the roundel logo that you created. So that mustache is featured prominently in throughout this brand still.
As prominently in the brand as it is on his face.
The challenge for you as a designer, and you mentioned what, sort of came forward from previous iterations of the brand is, for this, there's a certain amount of nostalgia for this brand, even though it hasn't been gone that long. Where do you draw the line on what to bring back and what to create anew?
Well, it was important to bring certain things back. And please understand that this was not Studio Simon coming in and saying, here's what's going to be best for you. But what I always say to potential new clients, and this was not a new client, but when I'm talking to a potential new client and they're saying, what's your process? The most important thing that I emphasize is that I ask a lot of questions and I do even more listening. And the reason for that is this is not a brand for me. This is a brand for that club. This is a brand for the fans of that club. And so I need to understand what the club is trying to achieve, what their vision is, what their goals are, and also what they're hoping to bring to the fans and for the fans. And so in this case, when Alicia called me and said, we're purchasing this team and we're bringing back the Legends, that decision had already been made on their end. Also, with regard to the colors, they wanted to bring back those colors. This was a brand that was very well liked. Now, I do need to issue the caveat that in today's day and age of sports branding, where you have names like the counter clocks and the rumble ponies and the on and on, what you like to refer to as wacky brands. And those kinds of names and the visuals that accompany them make a major statement, make a big splash, get a lot of discourse going, sell a lot of merchandise. The name Lexington Legends is not along those lines. It's comparatively benign. And so the name's not going to make a big splash, but it was nevertheless a well-liked identity. And so what we try to do this time around is bring back what was already good about it and polish it up and do, I've referred to a couple of times now as Brandiosa's iteration of this identity is as Lexington Legends 2.0. This is Lexington Legends 3.0. It's just the next in the line of what was a popular brand that represented this club very well. And I know ownership's goal here is to bring back the excitement of Lexington Legends baseball that used to exist, kind of went away for a little while there. The team didn't go away, but the excitement did. And they're looking to bring excitement back to Lexington and their fans.
The name obviously features prominently in some of these secondary marks. You've got one mark where it says it will be legendary, another one with home plate and the legend, as it were, be a legend, and legends never die as another one. So there's obviously a number of marks here that play on just the word legend. First of all, I'll just say I really like this script. It has a really sort of playful feeling about it. It feels different from other baseball scripts while still feeling baseball-y. So not trying to blow smoke here, but I really very much like this script. I particularly like one mark, the way it just comes together. It's just like the way the word Lexington fits with the state of Kentucky above the text and then legends below. And they're sort of nestled in together, and they all just sort of come together in a very visually appealing way, celebrating the state of Kentucky, obviously, which is something that I know that's important to this team. I've said this before on this podcast. I don't know that I have a question there, but I wanted to point that out.
Well, first of all, thank you. Some of the things that you said there were actually spot on with regard to what we were trying to do. You mentioned about the script that it was different than other scripts we've seen, yet it still feels like a baseball script. And that was exactly what I was trying to achieve here, because I think on a recent episode with you, I know which one it was. It was, although I don't know if it's going to drop after this one or before, so it doesn't matter which one it was, but we were talking about the fact that I've done a lot of scripts. I've done a lot of baseball brand identities, and scripts are just great for a baseball brand identity. So, there's no surprise that I've done a lot. So, but since I've done a lot, each time I do one, I try to bring something to it that is different than previous ones I've done. And when you've done a lot, that's a difficult thing to do. So the fact that this does feel different to you means that fortunately I was successful in what I was trying to achieve there. But also, if you have a theme of an identity there's a cap in front of me, the Lake County Captains. When you've got that nautical theme, there are a number of opportunities because you've got boats, you've got lighthouses, you've got ship's wheels, you've got you potentially have lifesavers. What do you call those?
Lifesaver is what I know what you're talking about. The life raft or
The round ring that you throw out to somebody who's fallen overboard.
we would definitely drown on a boat, Dan. We would never make it.
Throw the round ring, throw the round
Throw the
ring.
lifesavers. No, not the mints.
Well, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that certain identities provide fodder for multiple marks. With this identity, the theme of this identity is frankly a amorphous word, legend. How do you what can you draw from when the name of your team is Legends? You're speaking about a legendary character. Now you've got the character itself. There really wasn't that much to draw upon for secondary marks. So one of the things that we decided to do is to really lean into those scripts. So there's Legend script for the home jersey and a Lexington script for the road jersey. And, that's not unusual for a baseball uniform, but we then created, as you were describing, some multiple word marks where these scripts are used in various ways, not just by themselves. And there's also a script that says legendary, and then an accompanying one that says it will be legendary. Actually, that's being used currently as a teaser billboard in Lexington, as a teaser that something legendary is coming. And hopefully when they see that mustache, they'll get an idea, if not know for certain what is coming. So those scripts play a big part in this brand identity. And I think it's cool that you said there's no question here, but you were talking about how that stood out to you. And that's a good thing, because we need things that work, that are not necessarily objects. In this case, that those lettering solutions play a big part in what this brand will be visually, as well as how it will work on merchandise.
For sure, absolutely. And I think that those billboards and obviously that, this will not be a huge surprise, this announcement that the Legends are back, because, that legendary teaser, I've seen it on social media as well, that's certainly calling back to the old brand in ways that fans of the team will recognize. The last mark that I wanted to just comment on here, there is a single letter L that has as the cross stroke on the bottom of the letter, rather than the cross stroke with a serif on it. You've got the state of Kentucky. I think that's a fun approach that definitely ties to the previous brand, incorporates the state of Kentucky again, and stands alone as a letter L. And then also there's a version where it has this L with EX on it stacked in a way that carried over from the previous brand as well.
Well, it's a new mark, but it's not really a new take. The original, the Legends 1.0 identity, their home cap was an L with the bottom bar, horizontal bar, made of the state. So this is really an homage to the original identity. And if I'm not mistaken, even though the grandiose identity did not have a standalone L, I believe they had an LEX mark where it did that as well. So again, this identity, even though we've got a new character and we've got new lettering, there's a lot we wanted to bring back, we intentionally brought back. And as homages to the history of this ball club in Lexington. So all of that was intentional. And this is we created a new version of that. So it's genuinely a new logo, but it's all based on the past.
Well, normally by the time we've talked about these brands, we know what the popular reception was out there in the world. We'll see what that looks like on the Thursday before this episode drops. So there's a weird sort of time warp thing going on here. I feel like Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future, like, sort of traveling back and forth in time. But it's a fun brand. I have no doubt that it is going to be well received and embraced by fans who are nostalgic for the old team and fans who like the new look. Dan Simon, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again in just a moment for Studio Simon Stumpers. In the meantime, thank you so much for talking about this before it is unleashed on the world.
Well, thank you for having me on. This was a fun one because it's like we're in a time machine
I
here,
know it's exciting to me. I love this access. It makes me feel like a industry insider here.
which is
Follow,
what you are.
Go follow Dan on Instagram and tell him what you think of the new logo at studio_Simon. Dan, we'll see you in a minute.
See you soon.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so pleased to be joined on short order because this is a quick turnaround on this episode. I am joined by Brendan Kane, who is a nature and history educator in the state of Kentucky. Brendan, first of all, how you doing?
Not too bad, Paul. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Have you seen the new Legends logo? Have you checked that out yet?
Absolutely. I love it.
It is legendary, as they say. This interview is happening after the logo has been released, unlike the rest of the segments that we recorded for this episode, which were before the logo was released. So we know now that this has been a very well received rebrand here. The people love it. I'm going to ask you, as an educator of nature and history and culture in the state of Kentucky, why is Kentucky legendary?
See, and that's such a great question because Kentucky truly, as a state, has so much to offer. Going back to recognizing we're on ancestral lands of the Cherokee and the Shawnee and their understanding of how they use these lands. To then we start seeing, practically the late 1700s, early 1800s, we're seeing people move west. The Wilderness Road coming through Kentucky, seeing people start coming out here, understanding, realizing that parts of Virginia aren't that great for growing corn, but Kentucky has some of the finest corn growing land. And with that corn growing land, eventually you end up in the bourbon production that the state is quite well known for. You start mixing bourbon, you start adding in horses, the Kentucky Derby, all of this. There's so many different, you get down through the western parts of Kentucky, you get so many just absolutely amazing. His natural beauty, whether that's caves, whether that's lakes, whether that's rivers, there's truly so much to do. If you like hot rods, if you like Corvettes, truly legendary opportunities here.
Legendary cave system, absolutely. The largest, I just wrote about this on Sports Logos with the Bowling Green hot rods and their Caveman brand. The largest surveyed network of caves in the world, over 400 miles of surveyed caves, exists in Kentucky. Obviously, the Corvette Museum, fans of minor league baseball will remember the sinkholes identity that the Bowling Green hot rods did. Of course, this Lexington Legends brand has played in the past off of the Kentucky Derby, which is a legendary horse race. So you've mentioned nature and history and culture. You're not from there originally. When you got to Kentucky, what was it that impressed you? What did you notice right away that was like the thing about that made in your mind Kentucky legendary from your own personal experience?
It absolutely has to be the people. Whether you're living in one of the three large cities here, whether you're living in any of the more urban areas or living very much in these small rural communities, it doesn't matter where you come from, but you very quickly are kind of just brought into the community. It's that southern hospitality that is truly so strong here. That doesn't matter where you come from, but you're here now and you're one of us. Whether you're here for a day, a month, 3 years, whatever it is, you're one of us now.
So now you've been working there, and your job is to educate people who visit from other places. Do you think there's something about Kentucky that surprises people when they get there?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just think that, Kentucky's one of those states that you just get on the road and you drive through and you're just passing through. You're really with, whatever that final destination is in mind. And then you stop and, you're drinking an ale on the side of the road and you realize that there truly is so much to do that it's some cases a closely guarded secret. But truly is just a land of opportunities.
Have you experienced any of the iconic things, the Kentucky Derby, the bourbon? I'm guessing possibly you've experienced the bourbon. Have you done like a distillery tour?
Oh, I mean, I live thankfully not too far from the Bourbon Trail, so you can just hit distillery after distillery. So,
In fact, you seem to be enjoying a beverage right now. Is that a product of the state?
absolutely is. Can't go wrong with some good Kentucky bourbon.
Absolutely. How about a mint julep? Have you had a mint julep?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Waiting for my mint plant has some recent plucking, so waiting for that to start getting me some more leaves here.
So it really is like you've got this history that you talked about with the indigenous people who inhabited the area and still inhabit the area. You have the Corvette Museum that features these sort of spectacular vehicles, some of which got swallowed up by that sinkhole, and then of course the incredible natural beauty of these incredible caves that exist there. So really, like you'd be hard pressed to find a state that had like that much variety of legendary things that are happening. One last question here before I let you go. You've obviously seen this character that was just unveiled, Mighty Lex. What do you think of Mighty Lex, the character here, as a baseball player?
I love it. I think, I mean, truly, it is absolutely legendary.
I mean, you said it, Brendan. You said it.
Yeah,
Brendan, thank you so much for coming and talking about Kentucky on short order. So I know this was a quick turnaround. We appreciate it. And hey, next time Baseball Palooza is in Kentucky, we've already done the bats and the hot rods. We got to get there and do a Legends game. We'll share some bourbon.
Absolutely, Paul.
Thanks, Brendan. All right, everyone, welcome back. Hey, guess what? It's Dan Simon of Studio Simon with his Studio Simon Stumper. Obviously, you've listened this far. Dan created this brand. Dan, welcome back. I'm excited to see where we're going with your Studio Simon Stumper this morning.
Well, as has been well established here, the focal point of this new identity is a character along the lines of legendary folk hero Mighty Casey, the powerful slugger of the Mudville Nine. So with that in mind, our Studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of the following names, inspired by other legendary characters, was once the name of another independent minor league baseball club? Was it A, the Ohio Silver? If you don't get where that...
It took a second. It landed.
Okay.
It took a second, but it landed.
Okay. B is the Pecos Billies. And C is the Bangor Blue Ox.
Oof. Okay, so the Ohio Silver, which is hilarious. I hope that one's fake because I want to believe that you came up with that because that one is funny and I enjoy it.
Let me, if it helps at all,
Okay.
let me tell you what these mean. You obviously got the first one. Silver was the name of the Lone Ranger's horse, and whenever he would like take off to go save the day or capture the bad guy, he would say, "Hi-yo, Silver." And I think he might have even then said "away," but at least "Hi-yo, Silver." So
Yeah.
that's where Ohio Silver comes from. Pecos Billies, there was I thought, a pretty famous folk hero named Pecos Bill.
Oh, there probably is, and
He's
that's just
larger than life Texas cowboy who famously wrangled a tornado with a lariat. He was along the lines of Paul Bunyan.
Yeah.
And then of course the Bangor Blue Ox, that Babe the Blue Ox was Paul Bunyan's bovine companion. So
Yeah.
those are the reasons for these three names.
Okay, so the minimal sussing that I'm able to do here, because they all seem like they're possible, I am choosing to believe that Ohio Silver is too clever for a team to have come up with, and that is from the mind of Dan Simon. Pecos Bill, I like, but Banger Blue Ox is the one that jumped out at me as being potentially a real team without any actual information to base that on. I'm going Banger Blue Ox, not Pecos Billies, not Ohio Silver.
When I ask you these questions, I genuinely want you to answer correctly. And when you don't, I feel bad.
Okay.
And I do not feel bad today because you answered it correctly. Yes.
Very good.
The Bangor Blue Ox was a professional baseball team in the Independent Northeast League in 1996 and 1997. They were the first professional baseball team in Bangor, Maine in over 80 years. And unfortunately, they did not last long. They played on a college campus in hopes of getting a new stadium built. They hoped that this team would generate enough interest to get a new stadium built. Those efforts were never realized, and so they lasted but 2 seasons. But in those 2 seasons, they had a particularly notable player. One of the things about baseball is, for whatever reason, it lends itself to wonderful nicknames. You know, you had Jolton Joe DiMaggio, who was also known as the Yankee Clipper. You had players like Blue Moon Odom, a pitcher for the 1960s and 70s Oakland A's. You had Al Raboski, who was known as the Mad Hungarian. Willie Mays was the Say Hey Kid. You had Shoeless Joe Jackson, just wonderful, wonderful nicknames. And one of my favorite nicknames was that of Dennis Oil Can Boyd, who was a pitcher for, most notably, the Boston Red Sox. He pitched in the 1986 World Series against the Darryl Strawberry, Doc Gooden, Gary Carter, New York Mets. So he was attempting a comeback 5 years since he last pitched in the majors, 10 years removed from pitching in that 1986 World Series, played for the 1996 Bangor Blue Ox. And despite going 10-0 with a 3.22 earned run average, no major league team came a-calling. So that's the story of the Bangor Blue Ox, another team named after the theme of legendary characters.
Well, what a morning this has been. We got to do the first ever pre-release episode of Baseball by Design, and I was able to pull the answer to Studio Simon Stumpers out of thin air. Dan, thank you so much for everything that you do to facilitate these conversations. You know, we've known each other a long time, and so many times I've gotten to see these brands that you've created and write about them in advance to make sure that we had a story ready to go on sportslogos.net. And this is another instance where you have helped make that happen. And now we got to talk about it on the podcast for the first time. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for all that you do. And we will see you next week.
I am looking forward to next week when I get to once again chat with a podcast legend.
And guess what? Next week is another episode about a team that has not yet been released at the time of the recording.
It will be legendary. I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.